and welcome to Bronx Talk. A few weeks ago, a group of tenants won a stunning victory over a rogue landlord who had overcharged the residents of a Kingsbridge Terrace building for years. Assisted by the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, these tenants band together and in 2018 filed a complaint with the state's Division of Homes and Community Renewal, DHCR. Instead of responding within the standard of 90 days, get this, it took them 7 years to finally rule that the landlord would have to pay back a monthly overcharge of $52.50 per room. So tonight we'll visit with two officers of NWBCCC, one of whom has family living in the building of question, to find out not only what happened in their successful tenant advocacy, but also explain to all of us how it's possible to win a fight against a rogue landlord in the Bronx. So please join me in welcoming the co-organizing and development director of NWBCCC, Edward Garcia. Nice to see you, Edward.
Thank you for having me. And
the organization's Lead Armory Organizer, Juan Nunez, although he's here to talk housing with us. Nice to have you with us, Juan.
Thank you for having us.
Edwin, let's just start with you. What happened here? Where does this action fit into the spectrum of Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition activities?
Yeah, well, this has been happening for a really long time. Residents who have been responsible for paying for the long history of neglects that landlords use as a business model. Technically, many property owners use the business of cutting services, letting their systems really fall apart until they actually need to make a big investment. And unfortunately, the tenants have to pay for that investment, and that is a practice that we have seen used by many landlords across the Bronx.
So we would all appreciate it if they would maintain the building along the way, because I guess they kind of know. I mean, this is somewhat deliberate, you would think.
Yeah, this is a strategy. It's a
loophole. It's a strategy to let the building deteriorate, and then you can get funding to rehab it instead of doing that. And then, of course, you charge the tenants and you say, we got to redo the buildings.
And, tenants are already paying regular rent increases, so this is a rent increase that is additional to what they pay on a regular basis, and that's very unfortunate that tenants have to pay this forever. It's a permanent rent increase.
We will talk a little bit about how to deal with that in general, but for you, and Juan knows a lot of the details, why was this successful? What worked here that could be taught to other people who are in similar circumstances?
Well, I think that they never gave up, right? I think they knew that what was done was, one, done incorrectly, and that, two, that there was a business practice. So we knew that this particular landlord had done this in several other buildings where, one, in some cases that repair wasn't necessary at all, and two, where the systems continued to collapse after they have already paid for that system, after that increase was improved. And so they put up a very comprehensive opposition, and they knew that what they had put together was a strong case that the state should look into. So it's just a show of that, you have to stay committed to the cause and remain organized. And I think what was useful is having a strong legal partner and also to stay connected to Northwest Bronx and be part of a broader movement.
A broader movement, and also people with expertise and experience in this. Juan, one of the things that you guys told me beforehand was the notion of a tenant association. Talk about that specific building, when they formed the tenant association, and why this was a crucial piece of the puzzle to get this victory, if you will, at Kingsbridge Terrace.
Well, we formed the Tenant Association back in 2009.
Wow, so even prior to where the thing really blew up.
There was a big fire in 2008 in the building, and a whole line of apartments were pretty much knocked out. So we were connected to the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition through Our Lady of Angels Parish. My mother went to the church, spoke to the priests.
Your mom still lives there?
Yeah, my mom is still in the building.
Still lives in the building,
yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to establish. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we established a tenant association in 2009, and then we just started organizing ever since then. Finkelstein was not the owner of the building in 2009 and 10.
Yeah, Steve Finkelstein is the landlord in question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we formed a tenant association, started meeting monthly, started understanding how the system works. We realized there were other buildings that were dealing with the same issues, and we helped form other tenant associations in other buildings. Then when Steve Finkelstein bought the building around 2011, we even signed a deal with him that he would make all the necessary repairs, do all the BNC violations, and then quickly to 2015, he started doing the so-called renovations to the bathrooms and kitchens. And in 2018, we were hit with the rent increases. So in 2015, when he started the so-called renovations, it was very shoddy work, and they weren't necessary because, remember, we had a fire. So there was an entire line of apartments that had brand new kitchens and brand new bathrooms.
And so he did the renovations. This sounds like I'm just following along here. So he did the renovations that you didn't need at the time,
Right.
but charged you anyway.
Yes.
I'm working on that. But let's go back to the notion of tenant association. Number one, what does it take to, this is really instructive for the people of the Bronx, what does it take to form a tenant association?
I mean, the first thing is talk to your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors. You're all dealing with the same issues. That's number one. Number two is it's always helpful to get connected with an organization like Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition because they gave us all the tools. They helped us facilitate meetings. They helped us door knock. And they gave us all the tools we needed to really keep the tenant association strong. But it's really about talking to your neighbors and doing a meeting in the lobby and kind of presenting all the issues that you're going through and then formulating a plan. But I think the first thing you need to do is get to know all your neighbors and start the first meeting and just have these monthly meetings with their neighbors.
Both of you have talked about the need to communicate with NWBCCC. This is helpful because, okay, we got this idea, we all have this issue, but really, how do you move it to the next level? That's the main thing. So what was it that got you to the next level to finally get them to concede, or where is the settlement at right now?
Well, it took us 10 years to get to where we're at now.
Incredible.
It took us 7 years to get a response. And it just took relentless organizing. We formed the No More MCI Coalition in 2018 with other organizations. We even attempted to do a rent strike in 2020. I mean, we tried it all, right? And then finally, because we knew from the beginning that we were right. Like, we did the research. We lived through it. We knew that the work was shoddy. We knew that permits were falsified. We knew that he utilized the super to do the work, which you're not allowed to do. So from the beginning, we knew like we should be able to win this. We have all this overwhelming evidence, and we never like just stopped. We were just relentless in knowing that we were right.
Edward, I have some interaction with DHCR in the state for my own housing and some other issues that we have dealt with. They are part of this problem. That's the way I look at it, and I've talked to elected officials about it, because as Juan said, this was brought up years ago. It's like, hello, anybody home? Right? We want to talk about issues that you or others might have had.
Yeah, I mean, the state is really underfunded, which is a big problem. I mean, until recently, or in most cases, HCR is sending notices about this potential rent increase that people are going to be facing in languages that people don't understand. It's a very complex process, too, for a resident to even put together a comprehensive opposition to a very technical application. And so it's really difficult. So I wanted to, congratulate the tenants of Kingsbridge Terrace and also just calling on the need of funding institutions like DHCR to ensure that landlords in the state is paying closer attention to this application. And so this is a problem that continues to exist. Many tenants, not only regarding MCIs, but so many other complaints that the state receives.
We're going to talk about MCIs in a moment and explain exactly what that is. I'm just to go back on the DHCR thing. Now, you said it's a matter of funding. I wonder if it's a matter of funding or if it's a matter of bureaucracy Because I have been in circumstances where, and I've seen that, let's say, a housing project is asking for a loan, and they don't even review the application.
That's correct,
So
yeah.
then, of course, costs keep rising, and of course, things deteriorate. And then maybe they'll respond, maybe they'll say yes or no, and they won't approve the loan. Then you're in a bigger problem. To me, I don't know. Maybe they don't have enough personnel to read through the materials. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the lack of funding. And I think, like Northwest Bronx, and specifically about this tenant association, we have been preparing tenants to engage in this kind of fights because we know that, tenants have an opportunity, especially at this moment right now, after the big rent law victory, in 2019. We know that many buildings are financially struggling, but also operationally too, and that creates an opportunity for residents to not only fight for reimbursement of money that they deserve, but maybe for an opportunity to own the building. And so Northwest Bronx has made an extra emphasis in the last few years to not only ask for more funding for the agencies to operate, but maybe to think about ways to finance an opportunity for tenants to actually own their buildings too.
That's yet another thing that we'll talk about. We'll start with MCIs in a moment. I do think you're being a little bit kind. I just think that there's an inefficiency there that should be cleared up by state
Absolutely.
agency officials. And to blame everything on money when you got people who are employed and working is another whole thing. Juan, let's just talk about this whole MCI thing, which is major capital improvements. Why is this an issue? What is the issue with MCI? Why do you guys bring this up?
Because MCI is an outdated law, right?
What is the law and why is it outdated?
Back when the decade of fire, when the Bronx was burning, it was a way to incentivize landlords to maintain their buildings. So what they did was, if a landlord does so-called renovations that affects every tenant in the building, he could apply then for a major capital improvement rent increase. So what does that mean? If he replaces the boiler, if they replace something on the roof or an elevator, or in our case, all the bathrooms and kitchens, and in other cases, windows, he could then charge the tenants permanently.
Even though he's getting reimbursed from the state? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, he's not going to be reimbursed from the state. No. But what he's doing is that he's passing all the costs to the tenants permanently.
Permanently?
Right.
So then even after the improvements are done, they're still paying?
They're still paying.
Then the suggestion would be that you would need potentially to raise the rent for a period of time. Then when the improvements are done, bring the rent back to what it was.
I mean, in all honesty, I think the MCI should be...
I'd be shocked if that ever happened.
I think MCI should be eliminated altogether. But yeah, I mean, we are not... When the tenants move out, we don't take the windows with us when we move out, right? We're paying for the landlord's own renovations, right? So-called renovations. What a lot of landlords do is they use that as a way to just jack up the rents for tenants. It's not like Steve Finkelstein is maintaining the building, because right now the elevator in 2780 is not working. We have some of the highest violations in the building right now, right? So the building is not being maintained. So it's like on top of...
Even if they won the victory and get some reimbursement, you still got to figure out how to maintain the building.
And one of the things that a big issue right now is that when the landlord was granted the MCI increases in 2018, the tenants had to start paying it right away. Now that we won our appeal, he hasn't paid tenants back yet, right? So there's no mechanism to force landlords.
Right, and based on, and let's credit our friends at the Bronx Times and Emily Swanson, who wrote that article, what she explained was he's not exactly walking away from this and saying, okay, I lost, there's going to be an appeal, and so we're not quite done just yet.
No, not yet, no.
Getting an attorney is another thing for the tenant association, because you can talk about it amongst yourself, you can even have the assistance of NWBCCC, but you got to have an attorney.
Yeah, and that's why a tenant association is so critical, right? Because you can have one attorney represent an entire group of tenants rather than individually. And I really want to give thanks to Take Root Justice and our lawyer, Michael Leonard, who has been instrumental in having us win this case. Like the research that they did, they really believed in the tenants. Like we know now Michael for 10 years. He saw my brother like grow up, you know. So he from the beginning he understood the assignment, and the evidence that we collected was just overwhelming. And that's why a tenant association is so important, because so one tenant at a time, you're not going to be able to move anything. But if you do it collectively, right, then that's something that you can actually bring about actual changes to the building.
I'm going to ask you one more question, then I really want to get into this notion of maybe tenant ownership. That's another thing. You said you think MCI should be eliminated. What does the world look like without MCI? Like, why would that be an improvement?
Well, number one, these fraudulent rent increases wouldn't exist, right? On top of the Rent Guidelines Board, the yearly rent increases, tenants also have to deal with this additional rent increases. And it's a tool for landlords to displace tenants and evict tenants, right? Because it's an outdated law, right? I don't believe, and we don't believe that tenants should be paying for a landlord's...
But you still want them to be incentivized to make improvements.
Correct.
And you can do that, you're saying, without this kind of extra little bit. Did you want to add?
I mean, I would add that, like, I wish there was data, but, you know, based on the organizing we've seen on the ground, we've seen that the people who actually use this are very particular, savvy, predatory landlords.
They know what they're doing.
They know this system. It's a very complicated one, and they know that the state will be very favorable to their application. So you see a lot of big portfolios do fine without this increase, but, you know, and remember, this is on top of the regular increase that they get every year. So I think that this is used by a very specific type of entity, and I think that most property owners are able to operate their housing without this kind of increase.
And tenants, before this, I was really unfamiliar with this process, so think of all the people who are in those circumstances. Also, undoubtedly, had no idea this was, you know, in other words, we're all getting the education from these guys, but there's tenants out there, tens of thousands of them, maybe more, who are caught in this web without even knowing it, because the system is kind of being gamed, so to speak. Right? That's what you see.
And tenants are not informed.
You mentioned this to me in a pre-interview, and I want to pursue it. The whole notion of tenant ownership, and whether it gets into community land trusts, how does that work? Can that work? Does that work? Have you seen it work? And what would be the expression to the people of the Bronx to help them understand this notion?
Yeah, I mean, we believe it absolutely works. I think that in the past, the co-ops, the tenant control entities that have failed just have not received the adequate support. A lot of those co-ops didn't have systems in place, and we believe with the right support and with the right training that residents could be prepared to govern together, and that, you know, sometimes things like property management is not a role that an entity like that should do, and that they should outsource it. So I think, like, more than ever, we've seen an uprise of residents who are just tired of a negligent landlord that is unwilling to cooperate, to communicate, to work with them, and I think that, you know, tenants are just fed up of that kind of structure in which they don't benefit and they don't have a say.
One of the statements, one of the slogans from NWBCCC is, "Our Bronx, we plan it, run it, and own it," and that's what the objective is. But how does that process work? How do you get to that point where you can say we're actually going to take control or own a building when, frankly, it's owned by somebody else or some other entity?
Yeah, we know it's complicated, but we've seen other cities and states pass legislation that will make it more favorable for tenants to have an opportunity to own. And so currently, Northwest Bronx is a big supporter of the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act at the state level, a legislation that if me as an owner want to sell my building, my tenants will have the first right to come together, have a conversation about it, and see if they want to submit an offer, right? That doesn't disrupt the sale of the building. It wouldn't necessarily get a lower price for it, but that just residents have a chance to talk about it and think about an opportunity to buy it.
How do residents come up with, the millions of dollars that it might take to do that?
Yeah,
That's a big thing, right?
It's complicated for sure, and that is something that we're fighting as well. We're fighting for funding as well from the state, and also we believe that there are lenders who are willing to work with tenant associations, and we know that this will actually work with organized tenants, right? And so
Well,
not
you have
everybody.
no chance if it's not organized tenants.
So,
right?
we believe that tenants can work together with entities like Northwest Bronx and many other groups who believe that tenants should have an opportunity and potentially sponsor a transaction like that. So, organized tenants are going to be an important component of making this happen, but that there are many other types of housing that are failing right now that we should consider for tenant ownership, as the market continued to collapse, more banks are considering to foreclose on their owner, and so maybe residents should have an opportunity to be also considered as well.
So the whole notion then is when it's ready to be sold, the tenants should get first bid, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think Juan's building is a great example, and I think it's kind of important to name that in 2009, when they were organizing, it was actually organizing against a lender who took over their building. And for them, and I don't want to speak for you, Juan,
That's
but
we'll ask him, but that's like an extra entity involved in the ownership of the building.
Yeah, well,
which takes the immediate how to fix the building further away from being able to do it. Right?
And what I think is important to highlight is that they thought they can get somebody else to come and operate their buildings after years of negligence, right? 2009, now the bank owns it. Let's find a responsible owner, and they realize that person did not have an intent to be responsible, and so they could have been the ones who should have organized to own the building.
He's shaking his head.
Yeah, I think
so, which is going to make it a very easy question. Was it an option for Kingsbridge Terrace? Could it be an option in the future? Is that still in the back or the front of your mind? Where is that at? Using this as a template for the possibilities.
Yeah, back in 2010, me and my mother were actually pushing for an opportunity for the tenants to own the building. I don't think we were ready for that yet at the time, and also we were kind of forced into this deal with this landlord by the administration at the time. Mayor Bloomberg kind of said, this is going to be your landlord. We didn't really have a huge say in it, and of course we would want to own the building. And is there an opportunity now? There should be, right? If a landlord isn't maintaining the building and is falsifying MCI application, there should be consequences for that, right? He's not even facing a penalty for not abiding by the HCR's decision. We had to pay the rent as soon as it was granted. There's no mechanism that forces him to pay us back. So it's, yes, of course, from the beginning, we wanted to own the building, but it wasn't the opportunity wasn't
Let's
there.
see how the appeal process goes, and then you can come back here and tell us what the next step would be. I don't know, one of you mentioned the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act.
Yes.
So what is that, and where is that at? That's a state potential legislation?
It's at the state level, and we have a great cohort of organizations that are pushing for this across the state, and also great sponsors at the state level, at the Assembly and the Senate. And we've seen it work in other cities where we've seen a kind of an increase of social housing and resident control housing that is safe and affordable, and we believe that that's the way that the city and the state should go.
This would facilitate that whole process.
Absolutely.
People have heard the words community land trust. Does that play into this process in some form? Is it the same? Is it different from what you've been talking about?
Absolutely. Well, a community land trust could be an entity that could partner with the tenant associations with the sake of providing some financial guarantees, protection, and making sort of a transaction be more sound. And with the idea of how do we preserve it long term, right? Because we don't want to just get the tenants to own the buildings short term. We want them to preserve it for the long run.
How does a tenant association know if that's a direction to go? They call NWBCCC and get some advice?
Well, I think there has to.
I just answered my own
Yeah. I
question.
mean, we would love for people to get in touch with us, but I think there has to be a commitment. Like I really want to see this happen, and I want to collectively govern with my residents. And I think that's a really important aspect, in which we can also help have a conversation about what would actually look like. And we have done actually a lot of workshop with tenant associations to like understand in this scenario, if you actually were the owner, what would you do? Is that a decision that you really want to be involved in?
Well, you know, we go right back to the first question here, and that is the notion of you got to get that tenant association together. I think Juan said talk to your neighbors and all that. Juan, we'll give you kind of the final word here. Congratulations, because you won something, but it sounds like you're not really where you want to be just yet.
Not yet, no. We want tenants to be paid. We want...
Yeah, you want to see it.
Right? Like we
put your money where your mouth
the
is.
money, right? And not only that, this is something that's happening in a lot of different buildings around the Bronx. So I do want tenants, if you are in a Steve Finkelstein building, if you're in a building that has recently gotten hit with MCIs, reach out to the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition. There's a building, 2505 Aqueduct, right now that just got hit with an MCI of $97 per month. This is happening throughout the borough, throughout the city.
Aqueduct Avenue is the same district, same area.
Same area, yeah. So this is something that's happening throughout the borough, and it's really pushing families to the brink of, you know, evictions and self-evictions. People don't talk about this, but throughout my my time in the building, we've lost tenants, not just to the pandemic, but people moved out, self-evictions. You know, a lot of people count folks that go to housing court. No, people leave because they're just afraid.
They just can't. They
just can't. And there's about, right now in the building, there's about 20 tenants in housing court. He has tenants in housing court now for non-payment.
Wow.
So it's like, it's a real issue in the borough.
Edwin, I got to just say, Edward, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name a couple of times. Edward, I got to say, 50 years, 51 years?
51.
Just let people know what you've been doing
Northwest
for
Bronx,
5 decades.
Yeah, turned 51, and I think it's a historic milestone for us to hit 51. And for us, like I think like this is an opportunity now to think about like the missed opportunities, right? Like we think that Juan's building should have pursued ownership, but also, okay, what do we have an opportunity to pursue right now? And so Northwest Bronx wants to fight for ownership models and help tenants win cases that kind of result into tenant control.
You guys are great. Edward Garcia, Juan Nunez, thank you so much for what you have already done. It's a victory. We're not across the full goal line just yet. Maybe we kicked a field goal this time, and we got to get across the goal line and get a touchdown. But thank you and Sandra and all our buddies at NWBCCC for all the great work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, we always thank people. We thank our producers. Rebecca Hemmick, director, is Will Guzman. Urelis Encarnacion is on graphics. Ian Neville is on audio. The editor is Yessi Diaz. Cast of thousands with us here in the studio. And of course, you too. Most important, it's the people of the Bronx. So, if the curtain don't fall, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back next week.